Welcome to Soni Irabor Live. Tonight we have a very special edition, and it's also the day we're starting participation, interactive telephone calls, and questions and observations in the course of the 50-minute program. I have a very special guest. One, I would say, is a man who has, managed the storm so well so far. Mr. Taiwo Oyedele is the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Tax Reforms. And we all know what that means. So, you're welcome, sir, Mr. Oyedele.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you could make it. I tried everything, and I'm glad you could now finally made it. Happy New Year to you. And as they say, you are weathering the storm well. But we need the public to understand some of the functions of the tax reforms. Many people believe that it has not been done in the interest of the low-income group. Many are also saying that there's no regularity in the process. Well, I cannot say that I know everything. That's why we have you there. So please, with your background, can you just tell us straight to the point, because there will be many calls coming in. Can you just tell us what you have planned for Nigerians as far as tax reforms is concerned?
All right, thank you very much, and good day once again to all your viewers. The work of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee was to look at the fiscal issues and tax for Nigeria, and that covers spending, revenue, borrowing, and of course, when you talk about revenue, then tax is also involved. Particularly for the tax reform, which is the aspect that seems to be of most interest to our people. The old tax system that we had before these new ones started was a system where we were taxing our lowest income earners. People who earned just above 30,000 naira a month were made to pay tax. Small businesses, once they made more than 25 million naira a year, that's just about 2 million naira a month, they were made to pay corporate income tax, charge VAT, withholding tax, and all manner of levies and charges. Even for large businesses, we had provisions in our laws imposing taxes on their turnover, even when they had not made profit. We had significant amount of what we call withholding tax. This is the money that the businesses should be using to expand and manage their working capital, was taken as advanced taxes when they had to borrow at very high interest rates. We also had instances where we had economic distortion. For example, some companies were eligible to tax exemption by the reason that they operate in the free trade zone, and then they produce goods and sell to the local market, competing with companies in the local market that are paying taxes. And that made it difficult for those local companies to compete. We also have instances where we have what I'll call wasteful incentives, that if you were highly connected, you got waivers, duties, VAT exemption that was not freely available to other people. So the objectives of this reform were very clear. One is to protect the poorest amongst us by exempting the lowest income earners from paying personal income tax. Two, for small businesses to increase the exemption threshold, which is now up to 100 million naira a year. That's 4 times what it was before. With that threshold, they would not have to pay corporate tax, they would not have to charge VAT on their goods and services, and they will not have to suffer withholding tax on their own income. Neither would they have to deduct withholding tax when they are dealing with customers, suppliers and vendors. For large businesses as well, the tax on their turnover, we sometimes translate to tax on their capital, has been removed, and the wasteful incentives have been rationalized such that what we have now is less of discretionary powers, but more of very objective, clear rules applicable to everyone who is qualified. Those who are operating in the free trade zone are allowed to export their goods and services without paying taxes. But should they want to sell to the local market, they'll have to pay the tax that other people are paying so that we can create a level playing field. So there are so many incentives and waivers, particularly for the low-income earners that you mentioned. I would even say that the primary focus of this reform was to provide relief to those low-income earners as well as small businesses. But even beyond that, the middle-income earners would also see a reduction in their PAYE. So they will not be totally exempted, but they will see a reduction in the taxes that they used to pay before. Overall, about 98% of all workers, private and public sector combined, would either see their PAYE, that's the personal income tax on their salaries or income, disappear, or they will see a reduction in those income. Beyond that, for the informal sector, because you would agree with me, majority of our people who are doing business are not properly organized, and many of them can't even keep proper records. So part of the reform is also that we develop a presumptive tax regime whereby those who are making money of about 12 million naira or less in a year in their turnover in the informal sector would also be exempted from tax. And those making more than that threshold will pay a small percentage of their turnover, about 1%. And then because the whole idea is to bring some sanity. Under the old regime, we had more than 60 different taxes and levies officially collectible by local government, state, and federal government, and unofficially those numbers exceed 200. So we're not, we were almost in the way of progress for our country with the tax system that we had before. So these are the reasons why, for us, we think that everybody who understand this reform will have no reason to object to them, because to object to this reform would be to say, let's stay down the way we have been instead of moving forward.
Okay. I like the efforts you have made so far, and I like the fact that you've explained it to the best of your ability and our understanding. But let me ask you, how come the publicity was not, public awareness now, was not as strong and as long as it should take before you impose this tax? Well, I don't know whether it should be the word, we should use the word impose, but introduced the tax reform.
Yes, people decide what it's important to them per time and what they prioritize. This reform started in 2023. The committee was inaugurated in August 2023. And immediately we went to town. We had engagement with over 40 different sectors. We're having those engagements dedicated to individual sectors. If we're meeting with agricultural sector, we dedicated the time to them. If we're meeting with small businesses, manufacturers, Nigerians in the diaspora, and those records are still there. We publish these things in newspapers, they were on social media. You can go and still find them there. And people attended. It wasn't as popular as it is today. And when those bills, plus even in the committee, we have over 100 members cutting across all sectors, all walks of life, men and women, people of different religion from all geopolitical zones made up the committee, including the organized private sector. So we had also a lot of sessions for journalists, media, and so on and so forth. It wasn't very popular until when the bills were presented to the National Assembly in October 2024. Then there was the initial controversy was from the National Economic Council about the VAT formula. From that point forward, it became a very popular subject that was discussed extensively across media, traditional one, online. There were meetings. And these bills were with the National Assembly for 9 months. In those 9 months, we also had public hearing, and people were represented. The Senate had their public hearing for I think 2 or 3 days. House of Rep, maybe even 4 days. So they listened to everyone. There was not a single person they turned back who showed up. So these laws were signed 9 months after, in June 2025. And then it was announced that commencement will be January 2026, again, further giving people 6 months to prepare. And in that 6 months, we've been having series of engagements. So I will disagree that there hasn't been proper communication before implementing the tax reform. It can always be better, but I would challenge anyone to tell us any other reform of government where we've had anything close to this level of engagement we had with the tax reforms.
Okay, let me just say that the engagements, I give you a pass mark on that, about 65, 70%, which is very good. What about the normal, advertorials, advertising, publicity that you will see on radio? You have so many repetitions of messages about the fact that you're going to pay tax, and this is what it means, and then you break it down. We didn't see that. I think that is what I mean by the publicity or public awareness I'm referring to.
Yes, when you are working on tax reforms, you can't go to town and have things on radios, jingle, because at that point, you are still at the formation stage. Okay. So the engagement is mostly with groups. So you have market, traders. I think they call them Matan. We have small business like NASME and SMEDAN. We have the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, because at that point, it's not enacted into law. So we can't go on TV and say your taxes have been reduced. So there were also some town hall meetings. Of course, like I said, people decided what was important to them per time, and you couldn't force people to attend those engagements. Now, once the laws were passed, and we had this further engagement, because normally when laws have been enacted, government doesn't go around still talking to people. It was because this time around we wanted to do it differently, so people can understand the benefit in it for them and take advantage of it. And we had, engagement with the National Orientation Agency, and they are developing, I believe they've started rolling it out, because they have a very wide network across Nigeria. You will recognize that for our committee, there was even one of our meetings where we said if we were to go to one local government a day, it would take us 2 years to go around Nigeria. So practically, it's not something we could have done as a committee charged with the responsibility of advising the government on how to reform the tax system. Government has the instrumentality of how they communicate. But you also recognize that at the end of the day, what played out wasn't the fact that we did not communicate. It was that there were people who didn't want the reforms for whatever reasons, and they created the negative conversation and narratives. And for some reason, very strange reasons, those negative narratives went viral. Whereas if you put out the real information, which is positive, it doesn't go viral, essentially because those who are promoting it tend to love bad news more than good ones. But it's something that we're still working on, and the National Orientation Agency would, in the coming days, do more work in this regard. Okay. I would just say that the truth is people will want to see more explanation, especially about the technicalities of the tax reforms. Now, when I talk about people, I'm really talking about the low-income group, the middle class as well, before we talk about the high net worths. Anyway, just before I throw it back at you, let me quickly crave your indulgence. We take some break. Our first break is about now, and then after that, there will be phone calls. For the first time on Soni Irabor Live on News Central, we'll be having phone calls. And we'll have two numbers displayed on the screen. The one that shows whether you're calling from your own phone line or you're calling on WhatsApp. And then everything will be there. So in the meantime, we'll just take a short break and we'll be right back. Chairman of the Presidential Task Force on Tax Reforms and Fiscal, okay, he will say. Mr. Oyedele, please, can you say exactly what you have? We'll put it on the screen anyway. Yes, Nigeria's tax system in a shifting global order. That's what we are up against. And we're in Nigeria. But the shifting global order is the shifting Nigerian order. Mr. Oyedele,
How would you look at the person who does not or who has no excuse whatsoever except to claim ignorance? Does ignorance work in this?
Yeah, unfortunately, when it comes to matters of law generally, including tax laws, ignorance is not an excuse. But the good thing also is that for the majority of our citizens who have no capacity to understand, to keep records, to file returns, they're being granted exemption under this new law. But I'll still say all the same, it's important as part of our civic duty to understand the requirement about the tax system so we are not on the wrong side of the law. It's at the heart of the social contract that we pay our taxes and then government will use those resources to take care of us in form of social services, infrastructure, human capital development, and so on and so forth. And I do think that we have more opportunities today than in the past to be able to learn quite easily. In those days, I'm sure that other than watching a government TV station and radio, we didn't have the opportunities we have today. Today, on your mobile phone, on the internet, social media, traditional broadcasts, newspapers, the opportunities to learn, it's a lot, it's enormous. And we're also encouraging associations to also do some learning. And we're providing support for them whenever they want. So I do think that rather than trying to be ignorant intentionally, which is not going to be a way out, it's better to have the right knowledge, because also having the right knowledge means we're able to take advantage of the opportunities provided under the new law, because they say investment in knowledge pays the best returns.
Part of the concerns that were expressed by those who tried to, contribute to this program was the fact that they're not sure, there's no trust that the government is really sincere. Well, again, this is just an expression. They are not sincere because they don't expect them, they expect that they say they will do a lot of things. You even said a moment ago that part of the offshoot is when you pay tax, you will get, return on investment, in my quote now, when people say the government will provide basic amenities and all of that. But there are not enough basic amenities going on. Would you agree with that? Or is this, are we saying that? Yeah, go on.
I will certainly agree with that. There's not enough social exchange or fiscal exchange. In other words, what do we get for the taxes we pay?
Exactly.
But there are two aspects to that. One aspect is that government can be more efficient in how they spend our money. But the bigger aspect of it is that the money itself is not enough. I know that many Nigerians don't want to believe that, but I'm an accountant, so I work with data and numbers. So for example, last year, 2025, South Africa collected about 60 trillion naira equivalent from personal income tax alone. In that same period, Nigeria barely collected 3 trillion naira. So you can imagine if Nigeria has 60 trillion, they can certainly do more than if they had 3 trillion naira from personal income tax. And the story is not different for the other major taxes, such that today in Nigeria, if you eliminate corruption 100%, and you eliminate waste 100%, Nigeria will still be a poor country. The entire budget of the federal government for 2026, 58 trillion naira. All the 36 states for 2026, about 35 trillion. When you add the two together, it's under $70 billion. That's not even up to the money for New York City, not even New York State. Of course, far less than the budget for South Africa with 60 million people. So we have to address both issues at the same time. One is generating more revenue, not by taxing the people more, by ensuring that people have wealth, who earn a lot of income, but they are not paying taxes, should pay. Otherwise, you have a society that is promoting inequality. And when those people pay, so we can exempt those who don't earn a lot, we can then hold government to account as to how they spend those monies that we have, contributed to them by way of taxes.
There are some issues that you have raised. Corruption is one of them, and it's a very big problem. How do you think we can, control corruption or even eradicate it if it's possible?
Yeah, I think corruption is difficult to eradicate, but we certainly can reduce and control it. And my own personal view on that is always that corruption is best controlled by building structures and institutions. Unfortunately, majority of our citizens are more interested in just, complaining about it, and they don't do so much about it. So we go on social media, we go on TV and radio, and we say there's a lot of corruption, and we don't take active steps. And I'll give you just 2 examples. We have, these security votes. So the security vote that is not normally reported because they will say security is a confidential matter. And I said, why don't we, for example, push for an amendment to the law that says that the security vote will be declassified after about 10 years. So if I'm the one in charge of it, maybe I'm a governor and I have security votes and I can spend now without explaining it, I will know at the back of my mind that in 10 years' time, it will be declassified. And that in itself can be a deterrent. Another example is local government. We have about 774 local government, and that's the closest level to the people. I do not know of a single local government that has their budgets and their audited accounts online that you can see. We don't even know how much budget they have, let alone know how they're spending those monies. Whereas in South Africa, the example I just gave you, they have a dedicated website. It's called Municipal Money, where you find all the local governments, their development plan, how they want to grow and develop their communities, including providing water, electricity, roads, and everything else. And then they do their annual budget and they do their audited account. This is how you control corruption, by creating structures for transparency and accountability. So my view is that we should push for that in Nigeria. In our committee, we have done a lot in this regard, including sending proposals to the National Assembly for them to amend the Constitution to make issues around accountability to be by requirement, not when they feel like being accountable to us. But it's a journey that we all have to see as collective responsibility.
Well, I need then to take you back to publicity, because it looks like we need a lot more publicity than we think we are getting at the moment. That's one. Number 2 is, how do you talk about or include people from the diaspora? People from the diaspora, they send a lot of money to Nigeria. What can we do about them? Is there anything you think?
Yeah, we've had at least about 3 sessions with Nigerians in the diaspora. In fact, the latest one we had was in conjunction with the Diaspora Commission, and it was very well attended. So we had about 3 sessions with them with a lot of feedback from them. In fact, as recent as, even it wasn't dedicated to them, we had one about last week. This time around, it was even on TikTok space, and we had over 100,000 young Nigerians attended, many of them from outside Nigeria. We've also done frequently asked questions that are currently available even on our website for diaspora Nigerians. So we continue to do those engagements. Like I said, you never do enough of it, but I also believe that it will not be fair for anyone to say that we haven't done anything, so it's about making the best of what it is that we have now, while looking forward to do even better.
Actually, I will agree with you to that extent, except that there's a big problem on the ground, which is building trust and making people to get involved in the concept of participation. They don't seem to want to participate. Is there anything you are doing about that to ensure participation?
Yeah, clearly that is much bigger than me as a person and much bigger than the committee that I lead. When it comes to participation, I think is the job of all of us, particularly government at all levels, but also for different organizations, even religious organizations, associations, groups, cooperatives. we have to show interest in governance because it affects our lives. If we don't show interest and we don't participate, then we face the consequences of not doing that. For many of our citizens, they tend to only show interest during elections, which is not enough. So I'll say the tax reform is only just a small aspect of citizen participation in governance. And that's why we're hoping that the level of awareness that we have seen and the national debate as a result of the tax reform would then spur another series of interest in participation by our citizens and therefore help us to build a society we can all be proud of. But I would agree with you, certainly. Nigerians need to show more interest in governance and participating as citizens.
Okay, we're going on a second break very soon. But bear in mind, by the way, if you viewers at home and wherever, the lines are open and they are on display. The WhatsApp line is there, 705-500-1212. And then the main line, of course, the 705-500-1212 has just been displayed. The other line is 0808-821-1723. Well, I don't need to say all of these things because it's already on display. So we'll go on a short break. We'll be right back, and we expect to take calls from you while we're doing that. Thank you. Welcome back. We have somebody who has sent a message online, and of course we're dealing with the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. So his name is Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. There's a question online saying, do you have an authentic tax document that is different from that of the National Assembly? Because National Assembly, they're still debating, they haven't come up with a specific one, and that's my understanding of what was said. So do you have an authentic one that they can refer to online?
National Assembly released a gazetted version of the tax law, I think about last week or 2 weeks ago, which we already uploaded on our website. So if you go to Fiscal, fiscalreforms.ng. Fiscal is Fiscal, reforms.ng. You'll be able to download copies there. So whatever the National Assembly approves is the authentic version that we work with, as well as the relevant implementing agencies like the Nigerian Revenue Service.
Okay. So that's the one you have loaded into your website, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Right. Okay. Now, there's one question I was going to ask. I met a couple. They are based in the U.S. I think they are back to Nigeria because they are owning a school here. And they are retirees, by the way. But they wanted to know whether they will pay tax in Nigeria as retirees also. That's my I like that. What's the for?
So retirees, the exemption in the tax law is not really about retirees or people who are still active. It's about retirement benefits and pension. So the Nigerian tax law exempts retirement benefits and pension, as well as severance payment if somebody lost their job. But that one is limited to 50 million naira. For the retirement benefit and pension, there's no limit. Even if you earn $1 billion naira, as a result of that, it's totally tax-free. But you'd also agree with me that a retiree can take up another job or run a business. I was saying jokingly the other time at a forum that Aliko Dangote can easily claim to be a retiree. I think he's now about 60-something years. So imagine Aliko Dangote claiming to be a retiree and therefore all his businesses will be tax exempt. Of course, that would not be ideal. But any money that anybody earns as retirement benefit and pension is not taxable, including if they come from outside Nigeria.
So what if I start a new job? Or I start a new business?
A new job and if you are 70 and you start a new job, you start paying taxes. because otherwise we create a system where you have loopholes, and we don't want to do that.
No, what will I pay tax on? Was it not on the minimal amount or the maximum amount?
So if a retiree takes up another job, like broadcasting, for example, someone can do it at 70, 75. So if they are collecting retirement benefits and pension from their old job, they will not pay tax on it. For the new job that they've taken up, whatever they pay them in that new job is not pension and it's not retirement benefit, it's just employment income, and employment income is liable to tax.
Liable to tax. Okay. And there's no minimum to that as well?
There's a minimum. If anybody earns about 1 million a year, they will not pay tax. If you earn more than that, then you start to pay gradually. Of course, the person that earns 2 million naira a year will pay much less than the person that earns 10 million naira a year, and so on and so forth. So the system is progressive.
Okay. I think we have a caller. I'm not so sure, but I could hear from what they were saying. There was a call. It was whispering, so I couldn't hear him very well. Okay. While we're waiting for the call to be put online, one more question I need to ask you, Mr. Oyedele, is a man who is underpaid, when I say underpaid, means he below, well, okay, he is a low-income earner, but below the middle-class format. What right does he have to say he wants to be exempted, if at all?
Yeah, so the way the tax system has been designed under these new tax reform laws is that low-income earners who earn about 100,000 naira a month and below are completely exempted from paying income tax. Those who earn above that amount, up to about 2 million naira a month, will pay less than they were paying before. And those who earn from about 2 million naira and above will pay slightly more, gradually, more than they were paying before. So that's because we're trying to do a reset where low-income earners are protected, middle class have more disposable income, and the high-income earners pay a little bit more, so that we can have some form of equity within the system to be able to help people, because tax matters are sometimes complex and technical. We have developed a tax calculator. If anybody goes to our website, fiscalreforms.ng, that I said before, they will see a tax calculator there. All that they need to do, either on their phone or laptop, is to just type in their numbers. What's your salary? What rent do you pay? You just tap on calculate my tax, and in less than 1 minute, it will calculate your tax for you, telling you how much you were paying before under the old law and how much you need to pay now under the new law, and to tell you how much you are saving as a result of this tax reform. So the information is available for anyone who is interested.
Is this also available in form of an app?
No, it's not an app as of yet, just on the website. We're still working on the app.
Okay. All right, I think I was told we have a caller. Let's give him a chance to speak. Hello?
Yes, greetings. I'm happy to be on the Soni Irabor, right?
Yes. How are you?
Well, thank you.
So people, okay. Please.
I'd like to acknowledge that Mr. Taiwo has been very eloquent, and I also, being familiar with policies and how government language is translated into the society, I think I see what the president is really trying to do, and those efforts are commendable with the tax reform. And to be honest, it's one of the best tax reform I've seen with clarity in Nigeria. But what I wanted to pass on to see if Mr. Taiwo can address is the same way committees have been created to bring forth certain successes. Can committees be created to, or can his committee consider some things? He mentioned how, in spite of the taxes, monies are not coming in. Let's say we clean up all the corruption. Some of the very successful countries, specifically, say the Arab countries, they do not tax their citizens. I'm not saying now that Nigeria, the tax reform is not good. I'm not saying that, because it's one of the best, and I hope it gets even better. But they do not tax their citizens because they depend heavily on the country itself doing business. They depend heavily on revenues. They depend heavily on their export. They depend heavily on a good business sense with the country. And that's why he mentioned South Africa. We know how much heavily South African presence is in Nigeria in terms of business. So what I'm trying to, and I could go on, but I know I have a limited time. What I'm trying to ask is, can his committee review, research to see those countries, and those are not American countries, they're not Canadian countries, they're not the standards that we should look at. Can we take our time to research what those countries are doing, that they are successfully bringing in all the trillions that they need to run effectively their countries without outside income tax of their citizens? There may be one or two things we can learn from them to help us be even better and to help the President, Mr. Bola Ahmed Tinubu, fulfill some of the vision that he has laid out for the country. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, well, Mr. Oyedele, what do you have to say?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you very, very much for the call. I like the balance in the request and the question. Yes, very spot on, 100%. When we started the exercise, we understudied so many countries. In fact, I can't count. It will be at least about 30 different countries we understudied, including some in Africa. South Africa, for example. We also studied Rwanda a lot. Rwanda is a small country, but they are extremely impressive with the system that they have built. Same thing with Kenya, Ghana. Then we did outside Nigeria, including UK with the HMRC. We understudied the US as well as France. Some people are having issues with an MOU with France. But this was really us trying to learn from others. A lot of things that we're trying to introduce, some of these countries have done for many years. For example, under this new tax reform law, we have introduced the office of the tax ombud so that people will not be harassed anymore and exploited. You can then call the ombuds to help you. If anybody wants to seal up your premises and want to collect illegal taxes from you. But this was done by, Sweden started it many years ago. We're trying to do harmonization of taxes and how taxes are collected. HMRC has done it for so long, SARS in South Africa. So we have understudied them. We also study how revenues from non-tax sources, including natural resources, can also help stimulate economic activities, as well as how do you grow the economy, because the most reliable way for government to generate revenue is to actually grow the economy. If a small business becomes big, even if you tax them at 1% alone, they'll pay more than when they were small. So the combined impact of these, learning, we also learned from ourselves. We reviewed some of our old reforms and recommendations from our independence. We review our development plan since before 1960 to date. So it was such an extensive amount of work that we did. And we think that this learning, if we're just sincere, because sometimes the problem is lack of sincerity, we're grateful to Mr. President for his leadership, because as you would imagine, those who don't want these reforms for whatever reasons have sowed a lot of misinformation that at a point, it was becoming politically risky for him, because at the end of the day, you can have the best reform and people think it's negative and they act based on that belief. So, but if we have the sincerity of purpose and we have the leadership commitment, I'm very confident that in the next few years, we'll look back and say we did the right thing for our country. At the end of the day, we all want a country we can be proud of.
Okay, thank you so much. We have another caller. Please introduce yourself. Hello. If the caller is not ready, take the next, about 3 calls in waiting.
Yes.
Hello, what's your name, please?
I am here. You can't hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yes, what's your name, please? What's your name again?
I'm Dr. Oyedele. I'm calling from Lagos State.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Oyedele, thank you for your hard work. The question I have hinges on the 183-day residency determination. So and I now hinge it also to the retiree or the pension matter. So, can a pensioner live in Nigeria for more than 183 days without being converted to whatever money they get from the diaspora, without them being converted into residents and therefore being taxed? What I understood you to say was, if it's pension, not tax, unless they get another job. But is that independent of how many days or months they live in Nigeria? That's been the confusion for some of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oyedele, please.
Person, yes. So if somebody is a retiree, whether they live in Nigeria 365 days, a year, or 5 days, or 183 days, the residency rule will not trigger any tax liability for them on their pension and retirement benefits, no matter the amount, even if it's $1 million, they will not pay tax. But if that retiree takes up a new job and they are residents in Nigeria for more than 183 days in 1 year, they will be deemed to be tax residents in Nigeria, even if they are a foreigner. And therefore, on that new job, not on their retirement benefits or pension, on that new job that they took up, the salaries or income that they earn from it becomes liable to tax in the same way that if the amount is below the tax threshold, they will not pay tax. If it's more than that, then they will pay tax progressively as stated in the tax band and tax table.
Okay. We'll take just one more call before we end the program. So, hello. Is there a caller there? Okay. Well, okay, there's no call from there. Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, would like you to please just do a recap of everything we've said so far, because we have just about a minute to go.
Yeah, I think by way of recap is to say to everyone, our listener, to say that this reform was actually made for the people. And I can tell you from my experience of almost 3 decades in this space, I haven't seen anything at this scale that is designed to help the people, small businesses, large businesses, low-income earners, middle class, even the high net worth individuals, we have to pay a little bit more. There are also other provisions in the law that will benefit them, such that at the end of the day, there is no group of persons that will be worse off under this new reform. My advice would be that we do not run with the headlines that are designed to misinform us. Let's find the credible information from credible sources, learn about it, and take advantage of the benefit in this new law for the sake of our country. And I'm very confident that we'll look back some years down the line and be grateful for these reforms.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, Chairman of the Presidential Task Force on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. Thank you so much. And as you will leave, we will have a message, an advertorial message that we have to give before the program ends. Mr. Oyedele, thank you, sir. Okay, so this is how we sign off. I hope you got the message, especially on tax reforms. And those of you in the diaspora, I hope you were able to watch on YouTube. And those nationally, well, our channels are usually DSTV 422, Start Time 274, and GoTV 23. I hope you got the message, because there will be more calls, more participation going forward. And I want to thank Mr. Taiwo Oyedele for his very, very articulate expression of this message. Thank you all, and God bless. Good night.